Episode 3.
Here we are, episode 3.
Okay, you guys. Welcome back to Bonded Sister Edition. I feel like we went back and forth. What topic do we talk about next? Because we have such a long list.
We have so many things we want to talk about. We have so many things we talk about.
We talk about on the regular, you know?
Yeah. And so I think where we landed for this episode was
red flags.
That's right.
Red flags is a big one. I think, Christina, you're like the one that's...
You have red flags like down to a science, I feel.
I have
Your
witnessed...
spidey senses are up.
I've witnessed so many red flags. It's better to be aware of these things as opposed to not looking for things that could be potentially harmful or dangerous to your emotional life and your dating life. I mean, as I mentioned in our last podcast, who you let into your life in a romantic way truly just impacts so many other areas of your life. It affects how you feel about yourself. It can affect how you interact with others. It can affect the entire trajectory of your life.
It can affect your family relationships, which I know, you know.
Yes, it will. And it can affect eventually if you when you decide to marry someone, it affects your future children. Yeah. So it literally affects everything.
Chain reaction.
It has a very strong hold on your well-being. Like your general well-being, your day-to-day mood, like it affects all those things. Okay, so let's just dive right into it.
I have an entire list prepared.
I know.
My number one, and I think it's worth a little bit of discussion and feedback from both of you, because I know you have different experiences in this than I do, but red flag number one is a bad gut feeling in your relationship, or a general sense of uneasiness, unsettledness, and I think that this can manifest in so many ways, from walking on eggshells to how is this person going to react when I tell them something? It could even be like the butterflies in the stomach that you get in the beginning. You're a little nervous around this person, and it's good to get excited. There's nothing wrong with having chemistry and a spark with somebody, but if there's something that's making you just
on edge,
exactly.
I knew that feeling.
That is a huge red flag. So many people are willing to dismiss how they feel and what their gut is trying to tell them. And we hear stories about people who, before they walked down the aisle, they knew something was not right, and that they should not have married that person, and they did it anyway. So I just think this is such a huge red flag that is often overlooked, and it really has nothing to do with the other person in a sense. It's just what your own body and spirit is trying to tell you about a person.
Your body does literally have a reaction.
For sure.
You know, it's crazy.
It does. Your body can react sometimes before your mind, and your brain is able to process things correctly.
Yeah, and I feel like we can see it in each other too. Like we know it at times. Obviously, for me, I'm married now, but before, if I was in a toxic relationship, you guys could see it all over my face.
Yeah.
Like we saw you go downhill a bit. Like I could tell by your outer appearance, because if you're not listening to your insides, your outsides start manifesting what you're feeling. You know,
I could always tell with you because I feel like you weren't your normal bubbly self that we all know.
Yeah,
you know, you would kind of become more quiet, and we all know that's not you. You know,
just more reserved and
more
kind
reserved.
of an observer versus someone who's engaging with other people.
And that's not you. You're probably the most extroverted, and probably you second, but you are.
Yeah,
it's probably a tie.
No, I think that's a really good one. Okay, what would you say?
That's number one.
Number one, listen to your gut.
Number one, listen to your gut. Always listen to your gut. So number two would be hypocrisy. I think one of the most common ways it manifests is double standards. Someone who demands that you treat them a certain way, but they don't show you that same respect.
Yeah.
So having double standards in the relationship, having double standards with who does what in the relationship. Just there's double standards is just bad all the way around. It's a huge sign of hypocrisy. Someone who says one thing and does another. Is another sign of hypocrisy. Someone who is nice to someone's face and then behind their back turns to you and says, "Oh, that person's just horrible," and so noticing those two faces in one person.
Shady moments.
So that's number two.
Really good.
Number three that I would say is inappropriate jealousy and control. And I just kind of group those two together because I think the jealousy that can come out in some people that you're in a relationship with is a manifestation of a controlling person. So, And I also put the word inappropriate jealousy in there because there's sometimes where jealousy in a relationship is appropriate. Like if your boyfriend is talking to another girl or best friends with another girl, okay, well, that's a little bit of a boundary violation, and there might be some appropriate jealousy that will come out in you because of that.
Yeah, but it's also having like self-control to communicate like maturely. Like if a man is like lashing out at you because he's jealous and not just owning the fact that like, hey, I'm an adult. This makes me uncomfortable. Let me tell you. Let's correct this. Versus like it usually doesn't get delivered like that in toxic relationships.
Exactly. And when I say inappropriate jealousy, I also kind of mean jealousy when, you know, your partner's jealousy if you're just spending time with your friends or family. Like, and there's no legitimate threat to them, but they want to like control that time, or, you know, they want to know where you are all the time, or they're just inappropriately jealous about different things. And our mom has actually talked about when she was in a relationship before she met my dad, like he would want to control like what kind of makeup she wore. And you know, that is a huge red flag as well. So just general controlling and inappropriate jealousy. And as you said, Gina, the way that's communicated. So I don't know, Vanessa, you look like you wanted to say something.
No, I just think that like also too, it's kind of insulting because it's like you should not be, you know, telling someone you should like what they wear. That's like you should, you know, love and appreciate the person as a whole, you know, like
not trying to change them.
Not trying to change them, exactly. So I just think that it's just not a good sign at all. Yeah. At all.
Absolutely. Someone trying to control anything about you. And also really trust should be the foundation of any relationship. And if there's kind of all this inappropriate jealousy going on all the time, or this demand and control for your time, it essentially is like, okay, well, you either trust someone or you don't. And if there's that constant back and forth and jealous behaviors, well, then there's a fundamental
issue.
There's a crack in the foundation.
Exactly, 100%. So the next one is selfishness. And again, selfishness can manifest in so many ways, but ultimately, in my view, I think in our view, I could speak for all of us, a relationship is two people like being selfless towards one another, considerate of one another, and, you know, one person's time isn't more valuable than the other. So I would say like one manifestation of this could be like, oh, every time you hang out with this person, it has to be on their terms or when they're free.
Good. And I something I always say is like I interpret love for me as like someone putting you someone putting you first, but also like doing something for someone and expecting nothing in return. You know, that is like the best kind of love. You know?
I love that. And you actually said something the other day, like, hey, you know, if you don't want to do something for someone, don't do it for them.
Like no one's,
Like if you are going to make a sacrifice and you are going to show someone that you care by making a really nice gesture,
a genuine effort.
Don't use it to hang it over someone's head. I did this for you. If you don't want to do something,
she's getting passionate.
But
that's such a solid point. But it's true. And it's not really love. It's just kind of like an exchange.
Exactly. Love is not transactional.
No.
And I think that really sums up the selfishness point.
Yes.
It's like you can't play that game of trying to measure what you do for each other, or like I do this for you, so you do that for me. It is not transactional. So that is a big red flag and just a fundamental.
I can say, like, on the other side, when you're married, like, there's not a tally board on the fridge where, like, I changed this many diapers today. I cleaned up the kitchen. It's like, no, you have all hands on deck. You're a team, and you're trying to get everything done together so that when you get in bed at the end of the day, it's like, we crushed it. Like,
and that would be exhausting. Could you imagine if there was? Or you had to, you know, like, endure that?
Plus, like, sorry, but men are never going to be able to, like, we birth children. So, like, we have, like, a lot of tallies. But anyway.
Right. True.
Like, okay.
I when you're done, though, I have a red flag in mind myself. I don't know if it's on there.
What's the next one?
So, the next one I have is pride and arrogance.
Love that. Yep.
So, for me personally, I tend to be attracted to people who are very confident. And I think, you know, and I often mix up confidence and arrogance. And I think arrogance can be just defined as kind of that know-it-all person. You can't tell me anything air too. Because I already know, and like I'm so great and I'm the smartest person in the room. You know, and the thing is that it might not even be like overtly like someone saying those things. but maybe just acting that way, or, you know, it's just kind of this all-consuming air that goes with them. Or someone who their pride is like the most important thing to them. Like they are not willing to sacrifice their own pride for you or for seeing the other side of a situation or like anything. It's just completely blinding. And, you know, to just make this biblical, pride was the original sin, really, of disobedience of the devil in the sight of God. And so pride is like the root sin of basically everything. So if somebody is really prideful, it is going to just dominate their entire personality, and you will see just so many things flow out from that are negative for you as the person in the relationship with them, and just like affecting everyone that they interact with.
That's what I was gonna say. I feel like, sorry, and I don't want to cut you off, but that's what I was gonna say. It's like if they walk into a room and they're not received well, it's a red flag. Like if they can't get along well with others, not to like bring us back to like the kindergarten playground, but like if they can't get along with others, that's a red flag, you know?
It's so funny because I was going to say my red flag was how do they treat strangers?
Yeah.
And waiters
like
and
encounters.
how do they treat like just random people? Like it says a lot.
Are they so concerned with how they look and how they come out on top and they end up just like making everyone else in the room upset?
And like are they respectful from the get? You know, that'll tell you a lot about someone. You know?
100%. The next one is circular conversations.
Oh,
that one's
I
so
love
good.
this one.
So,
really good.
Meaning you have an argument with someone, and obviously conflict in relationships is going to come up. Conflict is not unhealthy. It is a healthy thing. Two people come from different backgrounds, are raised differently, they have different perspectives of the world. So conflict is going to happen, but how you handle that conflict and communicate, as you know, in marriage, I'm sure, it matters. And if you are in a relationship with someone and every time you argue, maybe it's about the same things, maybe it's not, but when you argue, nothing gets resolved. The person starts denying your feelings or deflecting the conversation somewhere else. You're not even talking about the original issue that was brought up, and nothing gets resolved, and there's no compromise reached. And again, this is something that it could be over the same exact topic over and over and over again, or it could just be every time you guys have a conflict, nothing gets resolved, and there's going to be that relationship is going to have a complete breakdown at some point. It's just delaying the inevitable.
Yeah. I think the most important part of the circular conversations, and obviously I think this applies for both women and men, is like if I'm coming to my significant other and I'm saying like, this hurt me, this bothered me, like, and they're not like, oh my gosh, I had no idea, I would have never done that, like it won't happen again, and it truly doesn't happen again.
Right.
That's how you know, oh, this person cares about me, you know? But if it's like
genuine contrition.
If like you're coming to someone, and obviously within reason, but I'm saying like if you are genuinely hurt about something, like, and that's what made me really confident with Zach. It's like if he did something that bothered me when we were dating and I came to him and I was like, this really bothers me or this hurt me, it would not happen again.
Add on to that.
Yeah.
I think you could also observe that when he would find out you were hurt about something, it hurt him too.
Yeah.
Like he didn't want to see you hurt.
Yeah.
And that is why he, you know, it wouldn't happen again.
Yeah.
After that conversation. So I think that is a huge point because, you know, people could say, oh, well, he said he's sorry. He's sorry. He doesn't want us to, you know, call the relationship off. But if he's repeating if someone is repeating the same pattern of behavior, then they obviously have no regard for your feelings. Yeah. And that is going to cause huge amounts of contempt and resentment in the relationship. And it's very abusive.
Yeah. I actually think this is one of the biggest red flags, to be honest.
I agree.
I'd say this is like top 3 for me.
I agree.
Ever. But
I agree. So the next red flag is subtle signs of disrespect. And I think I've talked about these other red flags in the context of like you're already in a relationship with a person. But the point of red flags really is to give yourself the permission to observe character flaws in someone before you even get into a relationship with them. Because there's a lot that you can observe in that dating phase. So when you're talking about subtle signs of disrespect, you can pick that up when you're just dating someone. You don't even have to be in a relationship with them. You know, it can, and I want Gina to be able to speak to this because she's a lot better at, I think, detecting disrespect subtly. I think you're just more like attuned to that. Whereas I might say like, oh, haha, that was a joke. When clearly, you know, maybe that person was saying it in a joking manner. Right. But they were intentionally saying something to make me question myself. That might be a subtle form of disrespect.
Well, and it's also manipulation too, you know?
Yes, exactly. But I would like you to speak to this
a
little bit.
What I will say is like, I think that I was in a relationship where I did accept disrespect or like learned at a young age. Like I was like made that like I looked stupid. Oh my gosh. And I'm not going to get into like middle school, early high school relationships. But like I feel like I was like made to look stupid before, and I was like, oh no, never again am I going to allow this. And then I think you just have to keep reminding yourself like, this is the line. I am not moving this. Like, you know, and I
being
think
very firm about your standards and
super
what you
firm.
will accept.
Like if you are talking to your significant other or what, like I would literally just walk away. I would just say like, I'm not accepting how you're talking to me. Like I'm just not accepting it. And just leave. Like remove yourself from the situation. Like if you can't, because ultimately we can't control how people are treating us, but we control what we accept. And so like if you just start accepting all these little like the lines inching, and like while I may have seemed to some men like, oh my gosh, you're like nuts. It's like, oh no, honey, like this is where we're staying. This is where we live.
I love that you brought up that point because I'm like the nice girl. Kind of the epitome. I'm growing out of it. Yay! But I feel like I've been the epitome of like the nice girl in relationships with men. And like to me, a reaction like that, like I'm just removing myself from the situation or I'm walking away. In my mind, I would say, oh, that's over dramatic. Like,
or like, oh, how did I make them feel?
Right,
Are they
how do
sad
I make them
left?
feel? Or like, okay, like I don't want, that's over dramatic. I don't want to look like I'm unreasonable. But like, no, but it really is just saying, you can say very calmly and rationally, I don't appreciate how you're speaking to me right now. Let's talk at a time that we can both communicate with respect and care for the other person's feelings. And you walk away. I mean, it doesn't have to be this big, explosive, dramatic thing. No. And you really owe it to yourself because there is no one who is going to stand up for you except for you. Yep. And that's something that I've definitely learned the hard way.
Very true. You have to have the confidence to speak up for yourself. And, you know, I think that you were lucky and not lucky to like kind of have harsh experiences earlier on in your life.
Meaning
Gina, that you had harsher experiences early on in your life that kind of set the tone for how you're going to be later on in your life. And but the thing with you is that, you know, we can learn those harsh lessons and do nothing about them, or we can learn those harsh lessons and, you know, decide to move differently, moving forward. It's all about what you do moving forward after you learn it the hard way.
100%. And can I add something else? Like I'm going to speak for men and women. A person that demands respect is attractive. Like it is so attractive. I'm going to speak for men. I'm not a man, but I think for me, it's so attractive. Like the respect I have for Zach, like if I could just walk all over my husband, like that's not attractive. And I think that men feel the same way. Yes, men crave respect, but as do women, right? Like we do so much for the household and for like, you know, we want to be appreciated and respected, but like, I think as a man, seeing a woman that's just like, demanding respect, I'm going to respect her. I think that really fuels the attraction.
Absolutely. For someone of good character. And that's true. The thing. I do think it is attractive in general, but you want to attract the right person, someone who will respect you, who is capable of doing so. There may be people out there who are a little bit emotionally immature, stunted in adolescence, people who are not on that journey of self-healing, self-growth, and we don't, when I say self-healing, I mean working on yourself. God heals all things. But we cooperate with his plan. So if you're someone that's growing and setting standards for yourself, you want to attract those same kinds of people. And as someone who does respect yourself and has a high opinion of yourself, you'll probably attract all kinds of people, but you'll be able to recognize those who are on that same path as you. Yeah. When you have that standard and that self-respect.
And I think it's important that the person, whoever you're with, makes you only feel good about having those standards and good about having that self-respect.
Exactly.
Like if they're making you feel bad about that you have a standard.
Who do you think you are?
Right. Like if they're making you feel bad about having a standard or just having self-respect, like that's a big red flag on them.
Absolutely.
That's a
Or
good
someone
point.
trying to get you to compromise your standards or
Yeah.
tell you you're being unreasonable
Or-
or gaslighting
or-
you for having
Or this
standards.
isn't a big,
Yeah.
this isn't a big deal. Why do you think this? Like, why that's, no, like downplay it. Like, that's also important too. I feel like guys try to downplay things, so you then downplay it.
Oh, to your point, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, you're good.
like to Christina being the nice girl, it's like if someone does try and take that and be like, oh, you're being unreasonable, you're being rash, you're over dramatizing something, like
Being
it starts to make,
overdramatic.
like, and then you start overthinking your own boundaries.
Yes, and then to kind of refer it back to what we were saying in the beginning, then you lose who you are.
Yeah,
in that
slowly it,
relationship.
like,
Slowly
chips
over
away.
time, exactly, and your personality changes. The inner core of like who you are that God made you to be and like grow and flourish, gets diminished. That's not the relationship for you. And they might not even be a bad person necessarily, but that is not the relationship for you. I think I just have 2 more red flags that I wanted to talk about before we open table and end on some closing thoughts. But the next one I have is lack of self-control. And this one I think is so huge. In a book that I was reading by Matthew Kelly, he said, someone who lacks self-control is unable to love. And I really think that is absolutely true. And I would say some signs of lack of self-control are things like very like explosive, angry behavior, whether it's like road rage, you're in the car with the person and they flip out, or you don't know, again, the walking on eggshells, you don't know how someone's going to react, like when they're going to react with anger to something that you say, or it could be in like a very public setting where someone just decides to like explode and go off for no reason, or privately, and they're then like a completely different person in public and they're kind to everyone, but you get the bad end of the deal and you get all their anger. So self-control, lack of self-control, I think definitely manifests as anger. It can also manifest as that boundary pushing, Vanessa, that you were talking about earlier, and like not having the self-control to respect your standards and your boundaries for the relationship and what makes you feel comfortable.
So this is bringing to mind, how do you like combat these red flags, right? Because like this is bringing to mind, like I think often like we're sitting in the car with that person, they're getting so angry and all you want to do is diffuse the situation. You love them so much, you don't want them to be mad at you, you don't want to have a bad day. It's like how do you make sure that you're in a position where it's like, no, I'm not going to accept this and I'm going to make sure that like I'm guarded to whatever degree to be able to just like walk away from this. And I think as you're saying these red flags, the 2 things that are coming to mind is like you have to maintain like a healthy status of independence from a person.
Yes.
That would be number 1.
A good sense of yourself.
Yes. And then number 2 is like a healthy detachment from that person, right? That like if you do come to find in loving this person, like they're not for you for whatever reason, having that healthy detachment to fall back on is like key.
Exactly. And just to comment on that, for me personally, I've been very single for the last almost 2 years. And I would say my new standard is really getting to know someone over, I would say, at least a 90-day period prior to just like jumping in a relationship with them. You're cute, I'm cute, we connect, let's make it official.
You're doing that. You're using the word friends with some of these guys.
Yes, exactly. I want to get to know someone in like a healthy friendship way. I want to know what their character is in different situations before I'm like attached.
Yeah.
I just knocked my mic. But before I am attached, like I need to be in a detached position, which is getting to know someone over a healthy period of time and observing, do they respect me? Do they treat me with consideration? Do they respect my boundaries? Observing all of that before I make any sort of commitment to them.
Like you let someone in emotionally.
Before you let someone in emotionally. And
like
then
who are you opening your emotional door for?
And once you're attached, the baseline is then to try to accommodate that person. At least as a woman, that's how I feel. And so then you're like, I don't mean to say it this way, you're almost trapped by that emotional attachment that you were mentioning.
And then you start to put yourself second because the emotional attachment is ruling you, I feel like, you know? So instead of like putting what your self-respect first, let's say they start getting lazy or they start getting disrespectful because they know you're complacent because they know they've got you. You know what I mean? Like, and then girls also feel that they're attached. They're like, they put themselves to the side.
Yeah,
and
they accept more.
Right.
Yes.
And you cannot do that.
And to your point, Gina, the point of talking about red flags again is to try to see these in a person and observe it so that you can, if someone is showing a pattern, a consistent pattern of red flags, not that they make a mistake one time and you communicate with them and then it's handled and they, make their best efforts not to do it again. Okay. We're talking about a pattern of these red flags. So that then you can say, you know what, this is going to be unhealthy for me mentally, emotionally, and spiritually in the long term, and I need to remove myself from this situation.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. You have to distinguish that, like, we're not being like so hypercritical that like one false move and like we're detached, you're out. It's like no, it's just like
perfect.
No one's perfect, and like we all have made mistakes in relationships, like
absolutely.
Like, but it's just about you can't just keep accepting this like all these negative behaviors, these red flags continuously, and like well, how do we get out of that, and what can we do to combat that? Like guarding ourselves, independence, I think, and detachment, healthy detachment will help.
Yes, and having that period of getting to know people, as opposed to jumping in with both feet super quickly.
Yeah.
So the last red flag I wanted to bring up is interesting, but I think it's extremely important, and it's called derogatory generalizations about women. So, I think we'll get into this more when we talk about modern dating, but, there is an unhealthy dynamic, I think, as a cultural norm right now between men and women. But I think that it is important to find a man who has a general respect for women. Like, I've had men that I've dated in the early stages of dating, before I made any commitment to them, say things like, women are very manipulative and they're always dramatic. They always overreact. Like, if someone is just making these negative comments about women, and by the way, you're on like a second date with them, okay, well, then maybe you just don't like women, and maybe I shouldn't be sitting at this table right now.
If women are so manipulative, why'd you ask me out?
Right.
Exactly.
Right. Why do you even date?
Exactly. So I do think someone who makes negative generalizations about women is a big red flag.
And what's wild is that the man is making the remarks about the women to a woman. Like, that's wild,
Any generalization like that is so dangerous.
Yes.
Like when you're generalizing.
And I'm sorry, I mean to interrupt, but also too, we don't want to make generalizations about men either. And I think that's happening a lot too. Like, to
there's mutual dysfunction between the sexes right now.
It's like sad that we're literally a perfect pair. God told Adam, I finally made like you know the Bible better than me. You're perfect.
When Adam met Eve, he said, finally, like, this one is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh.
Yes. Like the perfect fit, basically.
Exactly.
And it's like, it's so, harmony. It's just so sad that like we've come to a place where it's just like there's this fueled like what's the word I'm looking for? Distentment?
Like disdain.
Yeah, this like fueled disdain for
the opposite gender.
When like we should be looking like you complete me and I complete you. You know what I mean? Like that's really the lens
you make me
grow,
at. I help you grow.
I didn't bring this up in red flags, but a partner who wants to compete with you or tries to compete with you in different ways.
Yes,
but
that is very odd.
There are definitely both men and women out there like that who want to compete with their partner. But it's like, again, the roles of men and women, it's not a competition. It is a complementary setup that was ordained by God.
I like that.
And
can you say that one more time?
Can I say that one more time?
So it's not a competition.
It's not a complementary. It's a complementary design.
Yeah.
By our creator.
I like that.
So those were all the red flags that I had. Just a couple of the top ones for me that I've observed.
I kind of have one.
Go ahead.
Like, okay, so one more red flag maybe I'll add, and maybe it lives in one of your...
My categories?
Yeah, your categories.
Because each one really should be a category.
I think a man that is rushing things.
Oh, yes.
Rushing the relationship, rushing aspects of the relationship, rushing the physical parts of the relationship, the emotional parts. Like, I think a man that's running full speed ahead is a little bit of a red flag.
Because you have to wonder, okay, you don't know me that well, so what are your ulterior motives? Like, it's kind of indicating that there's some sort of agenda there, if they're just pushing.
Right, and maybe they don't realize it, but are you trying to, like, get me so deep in this so that, like, if I pick my head up and, like, look around, I realize maybe something's off, and I don't feel like I'm in, like, a place to get out of the relationship, you know what I mean? Because then you're already so far in. I just feel like a lot of men some men want to rush and push. And I think like, it's like, no, like if you have plans, if you like have your hobbies, your workout classes, your yoga, and like he's starting to be like, no, let's spend more time together. Or you go out with your girlfriends like once a week, like Thursday night, ladies night, and he's like, I don't want you to go, stay here. Like just those little things of like pulling you back or rushing things. Like, I think that's like, I'm maybe mixing a few things here, but I'd say those are red flags.
The love bombing.
Oh, love bombing. I think that's what I'm saying.
When you're trying to love bomb somebody, you're everything to me after, 3 dates, and I know I'm going to marry you, and you're my soulmate, like pouring it on very thick. So I think that rushing things and having an agenda like coincides with that love bombing.
I think love bombing, I could have summed it up a lot faster. Yeah, love bombing.
But, again, sometimes people think they know these terms, but it's good to hear the description behind it and why it can be dangerous. Because we hear all these terms all the time on social media, and people talk about it, but what does it really look like?
Yeah. And what you're like you made, those are such good points, and like it really gets my wheels spinning in the sense of like I think love bombing can take all shapes and sizes. It's not necessarily love bombing, grand gesture, but it's not necessarily out the gate like just them hitting you up constantly, just love bombing you, like calling you repeatedly. It's 100%. Sometimes it like the smartest guys play it out.
Yes.
The love bombing. So, and
that
just
totally
made me think of that.
And take your time. Like, time is on your side.
What's the rush?
I think that gets us actually into our verse that we wanted to close this topic with. And, we've spent some time here talking about red flags and things that you should be on the lookout for, things that you should try to avoid. But we wanted to end this with a Bible verse of what love truly is. It's from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, starting in verse 4 through 7. Love is patient. Love is kind. It is not jealous. Love does not brag. It is not arrogant. It does not act disgracefully. It does not seek its own benefit. It is not provoked, does not keep an account of wrongs suffered. It does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth.
Love it.
Never gets old, that one.
These are the things that when you are looking for a long-term relationship, commitment, marriage, these are the qualities that we should be looking for. And I really just wanted to jump into that so quick after you said, don't rush. Like, what's the rush? Because literally the first line in this very, very famous description of love is patient. And I believe that it's first in that verse for a reason.
Yeah, I think that brings us through like some red flags to watch out for, what those could look like, how they could manifest in your relationship. Obviously giving people grace as well, and then this description of what love is according to God.
Yeah, we wanted to leave it on a positive, happy note.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting, and everything is, not to be like everything's situational or circumstantial, but like obviously you can't apply these red flags like perfectly, and you just have to be aware when you're dating and, like you said, move slow. Like,
absolutely. And give yourself grace, okay? If there's something that you miss in a person's behavior and then you're like, why did I put up with that for so long? Like, you know what? It happens to everybody in some way, shape, or form. And the key really is just to, like you said before, Vanessa, learn from it, grow from it, and just make the best decisions, for yourself, because as we've said repeatedly over our podcast, God wants the best for us. He wants the best for our relationships. He wants the best for both men and women. Yeah. And so when we live according to his definitions, his boundaries, his description of love, we're going to have really happy and successful relationships. And that's what we're trying to promote. So
seriously, that was so good. Yeah. Well, I feel like that wraps up episode 3. Some topics coming up. We might just go from this into modern dating. Like maybe we should do a poll or something to just see what like most would want to hear about from us. But like it could be modern dating. It could be, I think we have one like guarding your spirit. So maybe like a little bit more about our Catholic faith or like misconceptions that people may have. Like just talking about that. Yes. So maybe we'll do a little poll and think it through. But lots of good stuff.
Lots of good stuff coming your way.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.